everyone, today I'm here to share with you all of the books I read in August. Now sit back and grab yourself a drink because I read a lot of books in August. Total, I read 14 books in August. That's a lot. I don't know how I did it. Looking back, I know I pushed myself, but I didn't think I pushed myself that much to read that many. But then I realized that the Booktubeathon took place during the very first week of August, so that is why I read 14 books. This wrap-up video is going to be a little bit different from my other wrap-up videos. If you watch them, you usually know that I start with my least favorite book that I read that month, working up to my favorite. Since I've read so many books this month, we would be here forever. So I'm breaking it up into two segments. So the first segment is the books I read for the Booktubeathon, which I'm not going to go into much detail about at all because I have done my own Booktubeathon wrap-up where I go into detail about all of the books that I read. So for the sake of this video, I'm only going to show you what I read for the Booktubeathon and what I rated them, and then I'll reference you to my Booktubeathon wrap-up. And then I will go on to doing my least favorite book that I read this month, working up to my favorite. I hope that makes sense. I just didn't want you guys to be here forever because I can't expect that of you. Booktubeathon, I read 7 things, so we're going to go into that. The first couple of things that I read, I actually don't have. I got them from the library, so I'm going to pop a picture up. The thing I read for the Booktubeathon was In Conclusion, Don't Worry About by Lauren Grant. Nice speech for her high school that she went to. I gave it a 3 out of 5. It was okay. Then I read 2 Frederick Bachman novellas for the Booktubeathon. I read The Deal of a Lifetime, which I also gave a 3 out of 5. My least favorite Frederick Bachman reads. Then I also read And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer, also by Frederick Bachman. I gave this one a 5. Loved it. Would recommend the audio version. Made me cry throughout the entirety of it. Beautiful. Then after that, I actually read some full-length novels for the Booktubeathon. So for those, I read The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society by Annie Barrows and by Anne Schaefer and Annie Barrows. I read this for the Netflix movie, which if you're wondering, I have done a movie review on this book, which I will link right here. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5. And I also read The Proposal by Jasmine Gilroy, which I gave a 3 out of 5. Not one of my favorite books by her. I read a middle grade novel, Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. Lastly, for the Booktubeathon, I read The Simple Wild by Kay Tucker. This is an new adult romance novel. I gave a 4 out of 5. Really enjoyed this one. If you like swoon-worthy books, especially told in Alaska and about rugged pilots, I highly check out this one. So again, for those, if you want to see more in-depth details of what I thought about those, please reference my Booktubeathon wrap-up video. So outside of the Booktubeathon, I read 7 books for the remainder of August, which I think is pretty good. Wasn't expecting. This month was the month I decided to just go on mood. I just read kind of what I was feeling, and yeah, I think it was a good month overall. I'd mostly say this month was a really big adult book reading month for me. To my least favorite book that I read this month, to my favorite. The first book I want to talk about is Heart of Thorns by Bree Barton. This is a first book in a new YA fantasy series, and it is about a girl named Mia, who in a world where only women can possess magic and every woman is suspected of having it, basically like having magic is horrible. Like they're called Goroches, and it can use their magic to control how you're feeling. They can kind of lure you, they can touch you and kill you, and so women are really not appreciated in this world. They're kind of undervalued and really taken advantage of. And Mia is basically having to marry this prince, so she can be the princess, and she learns that she's actually a Goroch, one that has magical powers, and she goes and learns her magical powers and things like that. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5. I don't know what it is with me with YA fantasy lately. I feel like every one that I've read, I've been kind of underwhelmed by them. I don't know if that's just me as a reader kind of moving on from YA fantasy, which might be the case for me. I'm just kind of falling out of love with them. Like ones that I pick up, I'll think I'll like, and I don't really enjoy. Like I enjoyed this one and the message that it portrayed. It was all about women in this book and how Mia was such a strong woman, and if her fiance, the prince, would say something kind of disrespectful to a woman, she would question him. She would say, why would you say that, woman? And it's all about woman power, and I really enjoyed the message that it conveyed with that. But overall, this book fell flat for me. It was kind of boring. The middle chunk of it just lagged a lot of traveling and kind of just not much happening. I don't know if I'll continue on with this series, but I enjoyed that it was all about women power and women, you know, finally taking back the reins and showing them that we can do things and things like that. But overall, I was just kind of let down by this book. I just kind of read it on a whim, and I don't know. It was okay, so I don't know if I would recommend you go out and buy it right now, but it was just kind of a so-so YA fantasy book. I don't know, like I said, I'm just kind of feeling about YA fantasy. I think next month I'm going to give it one last push, and then if after that I don't like it, I might just have to take a step back from it, and I'm okay with that. Then we have Fight or Flight by Samantha Young. This is an adult book that comes out in October. This one I also gave a 3.5 out of 5, maybe like a 3.75. This is about Ava who goes to flight, and then she gets seated next to this really rude Scotsman, and of course they're attracted to each other, but like he is really rude and he doesn't like her, and then of course things happen. They decide to like, hey, even though we hate each other, we have some good physical attraction to each other, let's just do that thing with the friends with benefits, but not even really being friends. And of course, you can tell what's going to happen, but I enjoyed the plot nonetheless. It was steamy. It was a lot of romantic angsty tension, a lot of sexual tension. I enjoyed it. I'm just looking for a steamy, fluffy book. I'd highly recommend it. My grandmother asked me to tell you she's sorry by Frederick Bachman. I read this one this month because it was the very last Frederick Bachman book I had to read before I have read all of his books, and I'm kind of glad I waited till the end because I did not love this one. This one is a very hit or miss book for people. I have had a lot of comments on videos that I've talked about this book where people say they love it and a lot of people say they don't love it. I kind of fall right in the middle of this book. So this book is about Elsa, and Elsa is 7 years old, and her grandmother is her superhero, and her grandmother has told her all these stories about this magical land and this kingdom and these people that are in it, and then her grandmother passes away, and her grandmother entrusts her with these letters that she has to give to people. Her mother is saying sorry in these letters, and the people. And what this boils down to is that her grandmother's told her all of these fantastical worlds and people, and the people that Elsa has heard about in these tales are actually people that live in her building. So they're kind of like, I imagine, an apartment building. They have different tenants, and they're very close-knit, but they all kind of they disagree a lot and things like that. So the people that are in her grandmother's tales are actually real life people, and so you get to learn more about the people and the community and things like that. So I love it because it was really confusing with the whole, she would have this land and they would have people in it, and then we had to flash forward to like actual time. It was just confusing a lot. So overall, I love the heart of it. The ending was so beautiful and kind of bittersweet, but I just wasn't my favorite Frederick Bachman novel, sadly, but I still enjoyed it. So if you are wondering about his books and whether you should read them or not, stay tuned. Next week, I am filming a video all about all of his books, my favorites, what I liked, what I didn't like, and what they're all about. So in case you want to check out his books, come back to my channel next week for a more in-depth view of Frederick Bachman. The fours, I've got quite a few fours. The first one I have is Ghosted by Rosie Walsh. This is a adult mystery romance novel. I'd say very, very light on the mystery aspect. It's about Eddie and Sarah who meet and they fall in love in 1 week, and then Eddie has to go away for a vacation. He's like, I'll call you from the plane and I'll keep in touch with you, and then he never does. He just kind of ghosts her. Sarah knows something is up because she fell in love with Eddie, and Eddie would not do this to her, so she goes on a hunt to try to find Eddie to figure out more information about him, and then things ensue from there. At this one, I'd say the mystery aspect kind of took a backseat to it. I loved learning more about Sarah and her life, and there was a huge plot twist at the end of this I did not see coming. I enjoyed it. It's not my favorite type of like mystery romance book, but I enjoyed it, so I would give it a 4 out of 5. It was enjoyable, but just not super rememberable. I recommend it if you're just looking for a book that kind of will just get you by, or just in a mood for kind of a fluffier, light one with a little bit more depth. This one would be great for that. Then I have Good Luck with That by Kristen Higgins, which I also gave a 4 out of 5. It's about Marley and Georgia, and they're best friends. They met in fat camp when they were younger, and they also had another friend named Emerson, and then Emerson died when they're in their 30s. Basically, Emerson decides to leave these notes to Georgia and Marley to conquer their biggest fears, and it's about Georgia and Marley figuring out what to do after their best friend has died and where to go on. This book talks a lot about weight, and weight's a very sensitive topic for me because I am overweight. I'm aware of that, but I think there's a lot of people that are overweight that have really embraced their body and who they are, and the body that they live in, and they love it. I am not at that point. I do not like my body. I really don't. I'm not comfortable in it. I want to change it, but it's hard for me because I have literal conditions that kind of prevent me from doing that sometimes, and it's just a very sensitive topic for me because I relate to it so personally. So I really actually like this book because I felt very akin to these characters in this book that struggle with weight, that struggle with feeling about weight, with, you know, with things they would eat and just the way they feel overall. I really felt like the author did very good with that, because I know when you hear about books that are about weight, you're just like, oh goodness, is the character just gonna lose a whole bunch of weight and then be happy and go lucky, or is she just gonna embrace her body and for who she is? And you know, they embrace their bodies, and it's a long road to get to that part, to embrace your body. I am not there yet, not even close, but I enjoyed the conversation that this book was all about, and I enjoyed the friendship in this novel. Overall, I give it a 4 out of 5. If you are just interested in books that, you know, talk about sensitive topics such as, you know, weight and things like that, I'd still check it out. At The Dinner List by Rebecca Searle. This is a very short novel, only like 276 pages. It's about a girl named Sabrina, who goes to her 30th birthday party dinner, and there's 5 people there that she was not expecting. Audrey Hepburn, her passed away dad, her college professor, her best friend, and the love or the ex-love of her life. So this takes the notion of, if you could have 5 people dead or alive at your dinner, who would you have? That is this. So it's kind of like a magical surrealism book, and I really liked it. It's about her and about this dinner, yes, but they go into the past about her and her ex-love Tobias's relationship, how it started, how it ended, where do we go from here? And there was a huge plot twist in this book that I did not see coming. I thought it was amazing. I liked this book because it was messy. The characters in this book were messy. The relationships were messy. The friendships were messy. They were messy, yes, I said that a lot, but it was very realistic. I felt like I have a lot of friendships like this in this book. I've had some relationships like this in this book, you know? It's very true to form, because I think there's a lot of romantic books I read where it's everything just happens so picture perfectly and so lovey-dovey, and I enjoy it for that because I'm like, oh, I eat this stuff up. But then I also enjoy stories where it's just straight up messy, and I'm like, that's life. So I liked it for that regard. So I gave 4.25 out of 5. And the last book I want to talk about is my favorite book of the month, probably one of my favorites of the year, and that is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I finally read this book, and I am so happy I did. I waited so long because this book is hyped. Like, it's insanely hyped. Everybody has read it, and I finally read it, and I loved it. If you don't know what this book is about, it's about a journalist named Monique who gets a chance to interview Evelyn Hugo. Evelyn Hugo is an old film star. She's kind of like Marilyn Monroe. She has had 7 husbands. She's very, very famous. And basically when Monique meets Evelyn Hugo's like, I want you to write my life story. And that is what this book is all about. So it's told in alternating timelines where we have Monique talking to Evelyn Hugo now and writing the story, and then we have Evelyn Hugo taking over the narrative and talking about her 7 husbands in particular and what happened with them, why she married them, and things like that. This book is phenomenal. Does it live up to the hype? Yes, it does. I will say that 100% for sure. You will read this book in a span of days because it goes by so quickly. Not only that, but after this book, you're probably like me, you're gonna think that Evelyn Hugo is a real person. Like, I went on freaking Wikipedia, I was like, I'm gonna watch all of her movies and like catalog them all, and I was like, oh yeah, she's fictional, she's not real. She wrote her so realistic. This book also talks about so many important things. Diversity, you know, because Evelyn Hugo is a Cuban American and she has to struggle with that in her workplace as well as being a woman in the workplace. This also talks a lot about LGBTQ plus rights. This also talks a lot about sexuality. It talks about so many important things, and the author does it so extremely well. And I love the old Hollywood scene and how she got into films. Overall, 5 out of 5, gush fest. Loved every second of this book. I mean, if you haven't read this because of the hype, just read it. Trust me on that. I enjoyed every second of it. And the audiobook is phenomenal as well. I listened to half of it on audio. So good. Those are all the books that I read this month. Sorry for the long video yet again, but I read a lot of books. Had to talk to you guys about them. If you've read any of these, please let me know your thoughts and opinions. I would love to hear them. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.